Did you know you're surrounded by radiation right now? You can't see it, you can't smell it, but every second your body is exposed to invisible waves that could be affecting your health. From Wi-Fi in your home to sunlight and medical X-rays, we live in a world saturated with invisible energy. And although the word radiation often evokes fear, not all radiation is the same, or equally dangerous. But how much of this is actually harmful? How exposed are we? And how much of that concern is myth, exaggeration, or outright misinformation? In this video, we'll unravel the truth behind the impact of radiation on human health. We will explore the different types of radiation, ionizing and non-ionizing, and how each interacts with our bodies. You might be surprised to learn that some sources of radiation are closer than you think, even in everyday objects. We'll also reveal key statistics, the most extreme cases, and what science really says about the dangers, cumulative effects, and real-life consequences. So if you've ever wondered if your microwave is cooking you from the inside out, stick around. Because understanding the invisible can be the key to protecting your health and that of those around you. What is radiation? To understand how radiation affects our health, we must first know exactly what it is. Radiation is energy that travels through space. It can come in the form of electromagnetic waves, such as light or microwaves, or in the form of particles, such as the protons or neutrons released in a nuclear explosion. There are two main types: ionizing radiation and the non-ionizing one. Non-ionizing radiation includes things like radio waves, microwaves, visible light, and even the infrared rays emitted by your remote control. These have less energy and, under normal conditions, do not alter DNA or cause direct cellular damage. It is the radiation that surrounds us every day, from Wi-Fi to television. On the other hand, ionizing radiation can have much more serious effects. This type of radiation, such as X-rays, gamma rays, and alpha or beta particles, has enough energy to knock electrons off atoms and disrupt molecules in our bodies, including DNA. That is radiation that can cause mutations, cancer, or irreversible cell damage. Radiation and the human body. Now that we understand what radiation is, let's talk about how it interacts with our bodies. Radiation, depending on its type and energy, can pass through the human body and affect organs, tissues, and cells. Ionizing radiation, for example, can break chemical bonds within the molecules that make up our DNA. When this happens, it can directly damage or kill cells, or worse, cause mutations that eventually lead to diseases like cancer. But not all radiation exposure is dangerous. In fact, we are exposed to small doses of natural radiation every day, from the sun, the soil, and even from foods like bananas, which contain radioactive potassium. The human body is designed to tolerate certain doses without major consequences. However, when that exposure increases, for example, through frequent medical procedures, occupational exposure, or nuclear accidents, the risks increase significantly. The most sensitive tissue is usually that which regenerates quickly, such as bone marrow or the digestive system. Furthermore, the effects aren't always immediate. In many cases, the damage accumulates over time, causing serious illnesses to appear years after the initial exposure. Therefore, understanding how and how much we expose ourselves is key to protecting our health. Myths versus reality. When it comes to radiation, fear often stems from ignorance. And with that come myths. Have you heard that sleeping near a microwave gives you cancer? Or that 5G alters your genes? Let's separate science from fiction. Let's start with the microwave. This appliance uses non-ionizing radiation to heat food. Does that mean it's dangerous? No. Microwaves don't have enough energy to alter DNA or cause cellular damage. Furthermore, they are contained within the device. Unless you're inside a microwave, which we don't recommend, there's no risk. Another myth is Wi-Fi. Many people believe that sleeping near a router can cause insomnia, infertility, or even brain tumors. But multiple scientific studies have found no solid evidence to support this claim. The intensity of this radiation is extremely low compared to natural sources like the sun. And then there's the infamous 5G. Thousands of conspiracy theories have gone viral, from mind control to mass sterilization. But the reality is that 5G uses radio frequencies similar to those we've been using for decades. There's no conclusive evidence to suggest a risk to human health. The science is clear, the danger lies not in these everyday technologies, but in misinformation. Radiation is really dangerous. Now let's move on to the real cases in which radiation does represent a clear and proven danger. We're talking about high, prolonged, or inadequately protected exposures. Examples that have gone down in history. Chernobyl, 1986. A nuclear disaster that released massive amounts of ionizing radiation. Dozens of workers died within days, and thousands of people were evacuated. The consequences included a significant increase in thyroid cancer in children and genetic effects that are still being studied. Fukushima, 2011. Another nuclear accident, this time caused by an earthquake and tsunami. Although the impact was more controlled than in Chernobyl, the area remains under constant monitoring, and the environmental and health consequences are still being debated by experts. But you don't have to go through a catastrophe to expose yourself to risks. Medical X-rays, for example, also use ionizing radiation. Although in very small and controlled doses, frequent exposure without medical necessity can pose a cumulative risk. The same applies to poorly managed radiotherapy treatments. In the workplace, workers in nuclear power plants and the medical industry are particularly at risk. That's why there are strict regulations, protective equipment, and constant monitoring. The key is control. Without it, radiation can be lethal. Statistics and key data. To understand the magnitude of radiation's impact on human health, it is essential to look at the data. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 3 million medical X-rays are performed every day worldwide. Although many are necessary, cumulative exposure is a topic of concern for specialists, especially when there is no adequate control or supervision. It is estimated that nuclear industry workers receive an average annual dose of 2 to 5 millisieverts. To put this into context, an exposure of 100 millisieverts accumulated over time is associated with a small but significant increase in the risk of developing cancer. Regarding disasters, post-Chernobyl studies. They reveal that more than 6,000 cases of thyroid cancer were diagnosed in people who were children or adolescents at the time of the accident. And although mortality was low, the psychological and social impact was enormous. Another striking fact, the average human receives about 2.4 millisieverts of natural radiation per year just by being alive, breathing, eating, and being exposed to the sun. This means that radiation is everywhere, but it's not always dangerous. The risk depends on the dose, frequency, and type of exposure. Protection and personal action. Knowing we're surrounded by radiation doesn't mean we should live in fear. The key is to act consciously and make informed decisions. First, do not abuse medical tests with X-rays or CT scans if they are not really necessary. Always consult your doctor about alternatives with less exposure. Technology is useful, but it must be used judiciously and responsibly. Second, if you work in sectors with a risk of exposure, such as medicine, aviation, or the energy industry, follow safety protocols strictly. The use of shielding, radiation meters, and controlled pauses can make a difference in the long run. Third, don't give in to the conspiracy theories. Instead of fearing the microwave or Wi-Fi, focus on protecting yourself from the sun with sunscreen. Avoid unshielded radiation sources such as radioactive materials and, if you live near a nuclear plant, be informed about emergency plans. It is also important to teach the new generations to understand these issues without fear, but with respect. Because when you know how to face it, danger ceases to be a mystery. Information is power. And when it comes to radiation, understanding the real risks is the best way to prevent future health problems without resorting to unnecessary alarmism. Radiation is everywhere. It accompanies us from the moment we are born until the last day of our lives. But understanding it, differentiating its types, and understanding its real effects is what allows us to live with it without fear. Not everything invisible is evil, and not everything natural is harmless. True power lies in information, knowing when to act, when to protect yourself, and when to simply continue living without anxiety. Today you know that the microwave is not the enemy, nor is Wi-Fi the cause of your problems. The real risk lies in unnecessary exposure, lack of control, and, above all, misinformation. So if you learned something new, subscribe to the channel and like the video. Share this information with someone who still believes 5G is a secret weapon. Because the invisible can also be understood. And when you understand it, it's no longer scary.